The charge had somehow managed to sunder yet another piece from the monstrous enemy. Pierre had never seen anything like this in all his years of fighting. He had fought man and demon alike, but this creature defied sense or understanding. It was as if the entire building had sprung to life. Grotesque demonic flesh connecting walls and doorways, and it lurched and undulated as if assaulted by violent tremors. He had thrown up when they first arrived, and he wasn't ashamed to have done so. No one should have to face such a thing like this. No one should have to see such proof of the vile nature of the infernal. They had waited until the artillery bombardment ceased, blowing massive chunks out of the beast, and then they had set about it with well-placed satchel charges, thrown by men who never could have imagined themselves taking on such a horror. Yet the members of the 3rd Brigade of St. Thomas had overcome the terrible waves of pervading dread that seemed to emanate from the abomination, and with prayers on their lips, and some with tears in their eyes, they had made the charge. The thing that had once been a place of worship, but was now an insult to God's sanctity, may have been massive, but it was slow, like a gigantic snail that reared and stretched its disgusting meat around the battlefield. The 3rd Brigade went at it like ants, ripping through the already damaged parts of it with satchel charges so laden with explosives that they would evaporate a man were he too close to them going off. Somehow, despite the horror, their training held, and despite their losses as men were crushed beneath the great hulking mass of it, they started to shear lumps from it, like butchers about the work of Christ himself. As the masonry and joinery cracked, it seemed the meat could no longer withstand the terrible weight of it all, and parts would simply fall away, tearing like an overly stretched sinew. Too late did the men of the 3rd realize that their efforts had sealed their own fate. As they cut away lumps of the beast, all they did was give themselves more enemies to fight, and the advantage of their speed and tenacity was lost. They could no longer move around the creature as its errant parts flanked them, and more men were crushed beneath the demonic pieces as they desperately sought to make their way back to the central body of the cathedral. Pierre threw his last satchel charge, preparing to run, when a wall of flesh like a sickly tide crashed into him. He expected only death as the pale, ruinous skin of the wall hit him, and was unprepared for the gentle caress as he passed through that membrane into the ruined matter beneath it. Shocked to suddenly be surrounded by what felt like warm water, he couldn't help but inhale, instantly filling his lungs with a disgusting effluence of liquefied human flesh and waste. He felt the disgusting fluid rush down into his stomach, filling every bit of him, and worse still, he could feel it probing at his eyes, slipping behind them into the cavities of his skull, and filling his head with an indescribable pain as it rushed into his nose and ears with a rank ferocity. He was awash in agony as he felt the liquid picking at his flesh, burning it, and he was certain that had he been able to see, he would have borne witness to his skin sloughing away, the muscles beneath dissolving until his very bones were exposed. Yet, with the pain, came a terrible understanding. Floating amidst the ruin of man and the vile magics of hell that coursed through the terrible world in which he was suspended, as the burning sensation started to reach his very soul, he understood. His whole life he had been raised to believe that earth and heaven and hell were all connected. Earth was the middle ground between two greater planes of existence, with the angels of heaven above and the devils of hell below. Now he knew that that had been a lie. Heaven and hell were oil and water in a jar, flowing around and above and below each other, twisting into shapes too complex to imagine, mingled together but never mixing, boundaries set in stone no matter how complex the interplay of matter between them. This he saw as the acid burned through him. Earth, meanwhile, was nothing at all, a mere afterthought of creation, something discarded and despised, unjustly loved by its maker despite its flaws, little more than an afterthought, home only to those who were defined by their weakness. As this realization hit him, he began to hear a gentle chorus, somehow reaching his ears through the fluid, or perhaps reverberating through it, until it filled him from top to toe. A beautiful and captivating choir of sonorous voice was singing deep within the mire. As words of a language he had never heard arrived in his mind, he could feel his being reform, the acid burning less now as it remade him, took his flesh and drew forth from him an instrument of bone and flesh. The words of the song were burned deep within him, and he opened his new mouth against the pulsing decay and rot, and he willingly added his essence to that wonderful chorus. He felt himself become one with the congregation of Saint-Écorché and all his brethren of the Third. He felt himself come together with the rock and the stone of the cathedral, and he offered his praise up to Beelzebub, singing in the old language and offering the truest God his oldest name. He felt the agony that was promised to him, that would be his forever, as he was broken and remade again and again, and each lightning bolt of pain that tore through him added yet more beauty to his voice, to the resplendent choir of which he was now a part. For Pierre, the agony was worth the price, as he existed within the realm of that most euphonious song. But for those who would come to guard the valleys near Saint-Écorché, to watch the heaving beast as it sat like a cancer on the face of God's creation, all they would hear is the unrelenting screams of those trapped within. When the Black Grail swept across the Loire, Saint-Écorché was a parish of orchards and faith. Its bells once remarked the hours of devotion. Its cathedral spire rose above the fields like a nail driven into heaven itself. When the plague came and the faithful turned inward, their prayers grew desperate, their hymns became wails, and what answered them was not salvation. The priest gathered their dying flock inside the cathedral and sealed the doors. They sang until their throats split, and appealed to the divine to burn the corruption away. Instead, Beelzebub himself heard their desperate pleas. It seeped through stone and scripture alike, twisting devotion into a conduit. When dawn came, there were no worshippers left, only an abomination of flesh, breathing where the altar once stood. What emerged from Saint-Écorché's ruin was unlike any creature catalogued by the scholars of Christendom. It assembled itself from the faithful and everything around it, an involuntary congregation bound by pain and prayer. The cathedral walls bulged outwards, ribs of stone curving like a cage to contain it. Those who approached the site in the weeks after the fall spoke of a sound like organs playing beneath the earth. The air stank of incense and rot. Beneath the bell tower, a mound of fused humanity writhed in rhythm with the tolling of unseen bells. Faces bloomed and withered in its hide like ulcers of memory. Limbs, half fused with shattered pews and rusted weaponry, moved in imitation of blessing. Half-dead beasts brayed as the flesh moved around them, constricting tighter and pulling them into the mass. At the creature's core lay the relic of the town's namesake saint, a single rib, long thought incorruptible. The relic had blackened, pulsing with a dull crimson light. It served as the nucleus of what theologians would later term a Grail convergence, a point where sanctity and desecration achieved communion. The congregation had prayed for deliverance, and it was the Grail that delivered. Their souls did not ascend, they merged. The horror of Saint-Écorché, as it came to be known among the soldiers of the reconsecration campaign, is one of the most studied congregate masses in recorded history. Unlike the aimless storms of flesh that roamed the front lines of Beelzebub's hordes, this entity exhibits purpose. It guards the ruins of Saint-Écorché, moving only when provoked by intrusion or blasphemy. Its autonomy is mutable, a sermon written in muscle. Torsos kneel in perpetual prayer, their arms raised as pillars to support the upper bulk. The spine is a column of interlocking chalices and vertebrae, its multitude of legs supported by wheels belonging to horse-driven carts that were once found within the yards of the cathedral. Within the folds of its hide, the faint shimmer of weapon metal can be seen, rifles and sabers fused to bone, relics and icons embedded like tumors, ready to be used upon any who would approach. Witnesses describe its motion as solemn and deliberate, as though it drags the memory of its final mass wherever it goes. When the creature stirs, the ground vibrates with hymns. Attempts to destroy it have proven futile. Cannon fire sinks into its mass without effect. Fire only blackens it. When parts of it has been dismembered, that piece is often seen crawling back to rejoin the body hours later. During one engagement in 1857, the 3rd Brigade of St. Thomas managed to tear it into 7 fragments. By nightfall, the fragments had converged. None survived the ordeal. It has since been classified by the Office of Irregular Hostilities as a fixed diabolic convergence, a site where Beelzebub's corruption has achieved permanent equilibrium. The Church regards this as the embodiment of a terrible revelation. Faith, misdirected, can be as fertile a soil for damnation as sin itself. The priests of Saint-Écorché sought salvation, not power. They begged for the Lord's hand to lift them from the plague, and the Grail, ever eager to mimic divinity, obliged. Theologians debate whether the constant shrieking that emanates from the creature is actual prayer or merely echoes the damned trapped within its flesh. Recordings made by the Choir of Contrition suggest the latter. Within its body, phrases of ancient hymns are heard in reverse. Dona nobis pacem becomes mica sibona nod, peace undone, rendered backward and hollow. Among the soldiers of Christendom, superstition holds that killing one's own comrades within earshot of Saint-Écorché feeds the creature. The blood seeps into the ground and vanishes, absorbed by unseen roots. The soil, when disturbed, is warm to the touch, and smells faintly of myrrh. After the reconsecration campaign, the ruins of Saint-Écorché were declared a zone of eternal quarantine. Penitential divisions were stationed along its perimeter to maintain daily litanies and burn the fields. Despite this, the mass remains active throughout the ruined town beneath the soil. Seismic instruments record steady pulses, a heartbeat at 33 beats per minute. In 1891, artillery observers reported the fog over the abandoned village seemed to be ringing like the bells that were once part of the fallen cathedral. It was mere moments later that the earth split open, and the horror rose once again. Its upper form resembled a congregation of parishioners, each screaming to the heavens for absolution, supported by wheels of bone and sinew. Bells dangled from its ribs, tolling with each lumbering step. The thing advanced less like a beast and more like a procession, a broken liturgy moving across the land. 3 regiments were lost attempting to halt its progress. Those caught within reach were pulled into its surface, their silhouettes preserved beneath a translucent membrane. When dawn came, the horror withdrew to the ruins, leaving behind a field of kneeling figures fused together in silent prayer. No further attempts at engagement have been sanctioned. The office has since deemed Saint-Écorché a relic containment site, its study limited to remote observation. To the faithful, the horror of Saint-Écorché is proof that even holiness can be corrupted if despair is given voice. To the heretics and apostates, it is something else entirely, a triumph. They call it the Saint of the Fly, claiming it as evidence that heaven itself can be assimilated. Arch-Inquisitor Bellamont wrote, "This damned creature has endured all of which we have thrown against it. Its prayers are the echo of 1,000 throats that would not die. Were it a man, we would canonize it. Were it an angel, we would fear it. But it is neither. It is the memory of faith rendered flesh. Even now, this stretch of the Loire Valley lies fallow. The soil grows rich with black filaments that suspiciously resemble the hairs that grease the back of flies. Farmers whisper that the ground breathes. Pilgrims, drawn by rumour, vanish without trace. The bells still toll beneath the ruins, not the metallic chime of bronze, but the deep, wet, chucking sound of bone against bone. Those who have stood at the edge of the crater swear they can hear a single phrase repeated from within the earth. Hundreds of voices overlapping, weeping and pleading. Deliver us from deliverance. Whether it seeks redemption or simply rehearses the moment of its own birth is unknown. What is known is the horror of Saint-Écorché still preys. This file is to be considered classified for internal use only. All contingency protocols are sealed under Red Veil Directive. Subject is the horror of Saint-Écorché, also known as the Saint of the Fly, the Crimson Mass, and the Loire Convergence. Subject OIH Saint-Écorché GRV 007 represents a stationary diabolic convergence located in the ruins of Saint-Écorché, Loire Valley. The event is the result of a failed immolation mass performed during the spread of a diabolic plague in the mid-19th century. During the outbreak, parish clergy sealed their congregation within the cathedral and enacted what records refer to as the Mass of Cleansing Fire. OIH agents speculate that divine invocation was intercepted and reflected by the demon Beelzebub, resulting in complete metaphysical fusion of the congregation, structure, and relic matter. When the fires died, the parish was gone. In its place stood a congregate mass of sanctified and corrupted tissue, a self-sustaining entity of flesh. The cathedral's ribbed walls curved outwards like a cage. Hymnals could still be heard beneath the ruin. What remains now is not a demon, but an abomination. Faith turned inwards until it devoured itself. The entity manifests as a shifting structure resembling a conglomerate mass of flesh and material animated from within. Composition is a hybrid of organic and architectural matter. The core is comprised of a relic of Saint-Écorché, a rib fragment approximately 27 centimeters long, suspended within the organism's center. It emits a low-frequency luminescence of the red-amber spectrum. The external form is the praying torsos fused together into spherical masses, arms raised in prayer, limbs and vertebrae interlocked with cartwheels and ironwork salvaged from parish grounds. On the surface, countless faces emerging and dissolving across its hide, its mouths recite inverted hymnals at variable cadence. Around the beast is a persistent mist of iron and myrrh, residual photonic attenuation measured at 12%. Its motion is ambulatory but solemn, movement likened to a funeral procession rather than locomotion. Observation teams described the entity's presence as liturgical, the sensation of standing within a church that is endlessly conducting Holy Mass. The horror of Saint-Écorché remains bound within 1 league radius of the cathedral crater. Activation triggers include devotional speech, relic introduction, and mass bloodshed. Upon activation, the ground trembles with harmonic resonance comparable to tones produced by an organ. The creature rises in segments. Assimilation is performed through contact. Victims are drawn into the organism's surface and integrated within minutes, their silhouettes preserved beneath translucent dermal layers. Audio records reveal reversed choral fragments, notably Dona Nobis Passum, rendered as Mi Cap Si Bonanad. Behavioral analysis indicates the Mass exhibits devotional cognition rather than malice, a compulsion to continue its last act of worship. During the reconsecration campaign, engagement by the 3rd Brigade of St. Thomas, the entity fragmented into 7 portions through sustained bombardment. Fragments reconverged within 6 hours, and complete brigade loss was recorded. During the observation cycle of 1891, artillery observers reported fog over the valley resonating like bells. Minutes later, the ground ruptured and the horror re-emerged. The upper form resembled a congregation of human shapes joined at the spine, supported by wheels of bone and sinew. 3 regiments were lost. Survivors recovered, displaying extreme theological dissociation. The horror of Saint-Écorché is currently classified as an active bound convergence, and the perimeter guarded by Penitential Division 19. The Church identifies the horror of Saint-Écorché as the manifestation of faith inverted. It demonstrates that piety, when untempered by discernment, can nourish the same corruption it seeks to resist. Theologians remain divided on whether the relic core serves as anchor or imprisonment. All attempts at retrieval have been denied by the Theophantic Tribunal. Infernal factions of Beelzebub named the creature the Saint of the Fly, holding it as evidence that heaven's miracles can be assimilated. No direct infernal visitation has been observed within the quarantine zone. Even the legions of Dis avoid it. Strategic risk summary indicates that doctrinal contamination can occur within 1 kilometer. All sacraments lose efficacy. Prayer speech collapses into glossolalia. Subject shows metaphysical stasis. Soil exhibits continuous warmth and spontaneous germination of seedless flora. Exposure to auditory phenomena induces uncontrollable weeping and compulsive genuflection. The entity cannot be dispersed through physical means. Fire, bombardment, and sanctified agents produce no permanent result. All reconsecration efforts are suspended indefinitely. Strategic notes dictate to maintain a perimeter litanies at 6-hour intervals, deny entry to pilgrims and relic seekers, utilize glyph burners solely for surface sterilization, and in the event of re-emergence, initiate Operation Saber Chime, aerial saturation followed by flooding of crater with mercuric ash. Witness Log 1. Lieutenant Orr Chapel Cohen, 3rd Brigade of St. Thomas. It looked like parts of the church itself were trying to stand. When it moved, the creature sang. We fired until our gun barrels melted, and it kept praying. Witness Log Number 2. Penitent Engineer L. Moreau, 1891 cycle. The fog spoke in our voices. We heard ourselves beg for mercy before realizing it wasn't us. At sunrise, the field was filled with kneeling figures. None were alive.